Our new to us neglected yacht came with beautiful teak decks, but they were leaking, and that's a big problem on an aluminum boat. We've already had to remove part of the deck due to hidden corrosion, but instead of tearing up the rest of the deck, we're trying to save it. We'll take you through our thought process and then the replugging, sanding, and recaulking, but will it be enough, or are we just delaying the inevitable? Stick around to see the results and let us know what you'd do if Tongaroa was your boat. As you've seen in past videos, Tongaroa came with teak decking. Now we love the teak decking, it feels great on the feet, it looks good, but there's maintenance issues. This boat was obviously not maintained super well before we bought it, and we've already found some pretty substantial issues underneath the teak decks. And while we can see underneath the rest of the teak decks throughout the boat and have not seen the same problems as we have on the upper aft deck, we do have concerns about what's under here because there's screws all over the place, and we know that the caulking wasn't maintained, so there's likely going to be moisture under it in some places that we'll have to take care of.
Last time we pulled up the teak, it was a nightmare. The adhesive was brutal, fighting us every inch of the way, and underneath, a disaster. Years of trapped water had turned the aluminum to mush. Actually, goo. There was no saving it. We had to cut out the entire deck and replace it with fresh aluminum, and that was just one section.
A piece of teak as well, because we've got to replace this whole rear deck plate here that I'm standing on, because there's lots of, well, as you can see, holes everywhere.
It's a hole! You did it! Woohoo! Yay!
You can see, so this is the rear framework underneath the upper aft deck that we've got here.
Look, it's all tacked. Looks good. They haven't attached it downstairs yet, which is why it's still tin canning when I step on it. See? Ooh, it's almost like a steampunk thing.
Now, if we decide to take this off, we're not exactly sure what's under it. We've seen what was underneath the aft deck, which was basically some really sticky glue, caulking, whatever you want to call it, and then filler, which the filler was the biggest issue that we had because there was a lot of moisture that got in there. So that's all stuff that we're going to have to deal with if we decide to remove this deck.
Now, I love teak decks. I think they make a boat look amazing. And I think it's from working on the mega yachts and having teak decks. It's just, I don't know, there's just something about it, traditional teak decks. So I can't even imagine Tongaroa without them. The first, goal of mine was to save them. And that's what I've done so far. So I've taken the old teak that we pulled off the aft deck. I've made a lot of plugs. I've replugged the deck. And so far, I've got almost 90% of the teak deck we have left recaulked. And yeah, let's show you what I've done. If you're wondering what I'm doing, I've been waiting for the right temperature to take the caulking out of the foredeck. The foredeck's in rough shape. There's plugs missing, the caulking's got holes around it, it's getting water in. So that's what I'm doing. Check it out. It's kind of fun. And then I take my little hook here, you can see it, and I just run it up and down. And get all the old caulking out. Oops. What I thought was going to be easy, of course, was not. Doing the teak deck, see, right there. The problem is, I'm just going to lay down, this is nice. The problem with this teak deck is a lot of the grooves are too shallow. And you've got to have them fairly deep to put the caulking in so the caulking sits in there, if not they just come out. So now I've got to figure a way to make the grooves deeper. Tomorrow I'm going to go to KMS Tools. See if they've got something. I looked online and they were talking about a fine tool or I don't know, some people are using a skill saw. Skill saw won't work here because of course our caulking follows the line of the boat, which is so pretty, but they're not straight lines. So that's the goal tomorrow, is to make these grooves deeper. The caulking's already out of it, and then I'm just sanding with 40 grit right now. Does that look pretty? I know. Sanding with 40 grit with a palm sander, which of course is going to take a while. I don't mind it though, because it's just do it really. Like, it's just nothing works. Like, really. I would just do that, and then we'll put in some new caulking. And of course, as I'm sanding it with 40 grit, some of the plugs are popping up because they're quite shallow, so I got to take the screws out and replug. Again, it's a nothing job. It's kind of fun to do. It's just time consuming and tiddly, but it's going to be exciting when we get this whole deck done and resealed. Make the seams deeper for the new caulking, I used a hand router. Slow, physically demanding, but the best way to make a deeper groove along curved wood. This is what I've done so far. I just did, here, let me get my shadow out of here. I did these odd little lines first, and then I just use a scraper, and I'm just gonna leave it like that till it dries, and then we're gonna sand the heck out of this deck. And then the teak's all gonna look good. But I needed to get another thing of caulking gun. There we go. It's kind of like icing a cake. So that's how much 1.5 normal tubes of caulking did. Darby, don't step on that, please. So yeah, we'll see. Oh, I hate dogs. Okay, hold on. This is fudgicles. Look. Oh, okay, get off. Wait, Darby, come back. Don't go in the house. Stop Darby, Izzy. Come here. Stop Darby. She's got caulk on her paw. I gotta get some paper towels. Stop her. So remember how I'm working on the teak deck? Well, the plugs are all coming out because the teak deck is old. I gotta make new plugs. Plugs are really expensive, so I got a plug maker and some of our old teak deck that we ripped off of this deck. So all I'm gonna do is make plugs. I'm gonna try and do it. I know I'm in slippers and pajamas because it's one of those days. Oops. And that, you gotta watch because it's hot. Pull it out. And that's a plug. So, you know, I only have to make about 400 of them. But that's perfect. And I put it in my little plug bucket. Hi, Darby. Darby's like, what are you doing? I know. I'm making plugs. I know. Do you want to help make plugs?
Decided to start doing them in sections instead, so I'm probably going to put these into 4s.
That's the best way to do it because it gives you a sense of accomplishment, right?
Yeah.
Yeah? Are you warmer now?
Yep.
You look like me with your headband. What? I like it.
My wrist hurts.
I know. You're almost done though.
Maggie! Hello! Hello, puppy.
Maggie says, good job.
Thank you, Maggie.
Okay, well, keep going. We'll do pasta for dinner if that's okay.
Okay.
You like your pasta. So I had some holes in the deck, like really big gouges. Well, makes sense being it's a 1969 boat. So what I did, I don't know, people might argue with me, is I put some teak dust in some resin filler kind of fiberglass, and I filled the hole, and then I will sand it, and it will blend enough. And I kind of did this one over here too. I think that one I put too much dust in. This one looks a lot better, and that was just drying. But the deck is done right now. Well, not done. It is ready for some caulking, so that's what we're going to do. Really, it's all in the prep work, which takes a long time. Izzy did the sanding, I ripped all the caulk out. We've got half the deck done, just doing the forward part here. We've been at it for about 6 hours already, and you can see that what we've done so far is just this. But we'll get the caulking in right now because it rained last night and Blaine didn't sleep because he had to run up and get the tarp on here because I had caulking ripped out of the deck. So yeah, that's what we're going to do right now. Once the caulking dries, it's time to sand the decks. This is what they look like with fresh caulking. Beautiful, but always needing maintenance. Plugs fall out, seams need touch-ups, but at least now it's just repairs. This is how I watch TV now. I make plugs while watching TV. It's kind of like multitasking, but these plugs have to be made. All TEAK, and look at them all! Oops. Summertime brings TEAK deck repair because our plugs fall out all the time. So that's what I've been doing today. We've been back on our mooring for about 3 days now, and I'm just trying to fix some of the plugs on the front deck before it gets to rainy weather. So you can see with this one, excuse the wasp. So what happens is a plug falls out, then you can see that there's a flathead screwdriver in there, or a flathead screw. So that's the first priority, is to get that out. And since we don't like flathead screws on this boat, it's garbage. I do not replace the screws in the deck. They're solely to hold the deck down. So I've got about 20 plugs ready to go in, and I had to make my own plugs, which I think you've seen you do. But first, all these little mole holes, look at them. They look like they're little mole holes, have to be cleaned up. And the best way for me to do that Then it's time to fill the holes. So I make my own plugs. So I've got a few left here, enough to actually do this deck before I have to go make more. The holes are all cleaned out like you saw, and then I use Gorilla Glue. And everybody uses different things. Sometimes they use epoxy, I use Gorilla Glue. I put a little bit in because I know that there's a screw hole in the bottom. And then a little bit of glue. And then you gotta line up the grains. That's very important. The grain has to be lined up with the other one. I think that's good. And then bloop, 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 bloop. After that's all dry, I'll get my Japanese saw whenever I can find it. Right now it's lost in, yeah, it's just down there someplace. And I will clean that up. So yeah, that's what I'm doing today. Plugging the deck, at least getting this thing done before the rain hits this winter. I have not washed this boat and I don't know how long. Let me get rid of this so I can talk to you. She's dirty. And also the decks are dirty. So, in case you're looking, you see it's nice and red there and here, and you're wondering how I do that? Here is my trick. Cascade dishwasher detergent. I just spray it on and then I use a brush, I go cross grain, and I can usually get the gray off my TEAK, and it would just look better for the summer. So I'm just working my way down. I'm not doing the TEAK on the port breezeway because I haven't even sanded it yet. It's still got caulking all over it. But I will do the bow because that will clean it up for the summer and for our trip. And I'll clean up everything else. And then we're just slowly gonna work bow to stern with cleaning this boat. Where'd the little brush go? Oh, there it is. I just lighten it on there, let it sit. Do not ever scrub teak with the grain, because it takes the pulp out and then it just ruins your teak. Always across grain. Oh, it's slippery. But I'll show you. See how fast it takes the gray off? And there's Janice's #1 tip for teak. I like that, Janice's #1 tip for teak.
Now that Janice has fixed all of the ingress problems with moisture by recaulking and replugging, we know we're not getting any new water in underneath the deck, but that doesn't mean that there's not still existing water under the deck. So when water gets under the deck, you've probably seen it on the other video, you start getting corrosion like this. This wasn't actually decking here, actually it was a part. This outer section was wood. This was just filler and paint in the middle here. But that is what we'll likely find if we start getting underneath the rest of this deck. Now we know from looking underneath that there are no big holes because we can see the deck all the way around, but there's still going to be some issues that we're going to find. Now, the way this deck is put down is you can see this layer of filler on the bottom, and then in between the filler and the teak deck, there's basically adhesive or caulking that goes in between those two. And then on top, we have a bunch of screws. Now, when I say a bunch of screws, you can see this line of screws right here. And there's one in every single plank. Now, that's one set of screws. That's another set of screws. So that shows you how far apart these screws are. So if you take that and you work around the whole deck, that'll give you an idea of how many holes we're gonna have on this deck that we're gonna have to sort out. Not only that, we have no idea what kind of condition or shape the rest of the deck is gonna be in. We don't know if it's gonna be like this. We don't know if it's gonna be worse. We don't know if the plating's gonna be wavy. We don't know if it's gonna have a massive slope. So there are just so many unknowns that if we remove this teak deck, we have no idea what can of worms we're opening up. Now, based on all of that, if Tongaroa was your boat, what would you do?
Our leaking teak decks are just one of the many challenges we've tackled since buying Tongaroa. But if you want to see where it all began, how we found this abandoned 1969 super yacht and decided to bring it back to life, watch our very first video. That's where the story really starts.